The history of colonialism in the Caribbean region has left us with a number of questions to ask ourselves. What does it mean to be Caribbean? Is there a Caribbean identity? What exactly is our culture? If you are searching for books that explore questions like these and many more, well, look no further. This is Stay True to Yourself podcast. This is a podcast that is dedicated to exploring the various facets of Caribbean culture and identity, as well as colonization's impact on them through literature. This is a podcast that is committed to encouraging Caribbean persons to find ways to decolonialize their minds and embrace their cultural roots through stories and fiction. This is Stay True to Yourself podcast. Last week, we were finishing up our reading of the novel Minty Alley by C.L.R. James. Now, from that discussion, you would remember that the novel explores issues of race, class, and gender in the Caribbean in a pre-independent colonial Trinidadian society. Now, for today's episode, I want to delve into the theme of colonialism and its impact on the individual. The theme for this week is how colonialism affects an individual's attitude towards different races, privileging some races over others. Now, it's time to situate the scene. This is the part in the podcast where I will present a few lines that capture the scene's significance. Then we will analyze the scene together. This reading is taken from the end of chapter 5 to the beginning of chapter 6. She rose above him, and he went flat down in the dust before her. She cut him across the shoulders, and cut him again and again, and as he rolled screaming in the dirt, she pointed to the door. "Go to the bedroom," she said, and anxious for even that short respite, he ran inside. She followed him. Haynes locked his door, and overwhelmed with shame, tried in vain to shut out the thud of the cane on the little body, the yells and screams, and the "Hush, I tell you, hush," of his mother. He felt that he should have done something, that he should do something. At each blow, he winced as if it had fallen on his own flesh. The screams were getting less, but the blows were still falling. Good God, was she going to kill the child? He would not stay a moment longer than was necessary in the same house with that woman. He dreaded the thought of seeing her again. Had his foot not been damaged, he would have left at once. He should have saved Sonny, but what right had he had to interfere? He thought of the long wheel to the navel and shivered. Never did he want to see her again. Never. But that very evening, the nurse paid him a visit. As soon as it was dark, she came. She knocked, waited a little, said it was the nurse, walked in, drew a chair to Haynes beside him, and sat down. "I have come to see that foot of yours," she said. She was very thin, thinner even than she appeared at a distance. She was to all appearances white, but the telltale fingernails showed the colored blood. She was somewhere in the 30s, in the late 30s, battered by life, but certainly of superior style and breeding to the others in the house. Not that Mrs. Roos, for instance, was in any way vulgar. Not at all. But from the nurse's deportment and speech, Haynes felt instinctively that she had been reared in surroundings different to her present position. Or perhaps her nurse's training had helped to give a refined quality to her voice and manner. He noted again the extreme fairness of her complexion and her long, silky, almost golden hair. If she had had money, she would have been able to take her place with the white 99%, of whom had more colored blood than she had. It was only long after the nurse had gone that Haynes recalled with a guilty start that the loathing which he had felt for her over the beating of Sonny had almost entirely vanished. From this selected scene, we must ask ourselves this: what does this tell us about the Caribbean region? Well, when we look at this scene more closely, we see that even after Haynes witnesses child abuse, he is still so impressed, so amazed, so taken away by the nurse that he is somehow quickly able to forget the horrendous beating. He is still able to forgive her. He is able to forgive her and still maintain a relationship with her. He is able to do these things all because of the color of her skin, the extreme fairness of her complexion, and her long, silky, almost golden hair. Therefore, looking within the context of the Caribbean, this scene tells us or shows us that whiteness is still considered superior when compared to other races, and as such are treated differently. And we see this clearly with the nurse. Although she has these negative qualities, clearly abusing her son, all of those things are still somehow outweighed in Haynes' mind simply because she's a white woman. From my own experience and the experience of others, I can certainly say that this issue still exists today. In the novel, we see how this attitude towards race that is really stemming from colonialism, the history of colonialism, we see how that affects Haynes' perception of the nurse, in comparison to the other residents of Minty Alley. But even from my own experience, I can speak about, for instance, just recently I was speaking with a friend of mine who is actually a fashion designer here in the Virgin Islands, and she was talking about her experience and her struggle with making it in the industry. And for instance, like, she told me, even when speaking to persons about her success and just how she came to be, many persons are actually surprised to hear that she is a Virgin Islander. She said they would ask her, "Are you from here?" She would say yes. "Did you go to school here?" And they're like, "Yes." And then they're still going on. So like, "Are your parents from here too?" And then she's like, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." And then they ask her, "Did you study here?" And then she said no. And they're like, "Oh, okay, so that's why you studied in the US." And then she's like, "Well, why is that? Why is it only when she says that it somehow makes sense that she's successful?" It had to just take that one connection. Even after explaining, I'm from here, I've studied here most of my life, my family's from here. That one connection, to America, to whiteness, somehow, justifies, validates everything. When that shouldn't be, And I feel like for me, and that's just one instance of many, you know. And that's just how I can connect the theme to just everyday life, and it's real. And so it's clear that just from this example from the novel, we can definitely see how this can impact all areas of life, not even just relationships, as in the case of Haynes and the nurse, but we can also see this taking place in the economy, within politics, where race just gets involved in judgment and decisions and considerations that are made, where ultimately certain persons are given positions of privilege, positions of power, but are they really justified? Is race really a valid way of determining that? It's not. So as we begin to wrap up, I just want you to think back, reflect on any instances in your life where you can recall a similar thing happening. So as we wrap up, just to quickly recap, this week's theme was colonialism's effect on the individual, more specifically, how colonialism affects individual attitudes towards different races, privileging some races over others. And we have arrived to the end of our podcast. And as you know, we always end with a question. Alright, so here's the question. How might have Haynes responded to the child beating if the character wasn't the nurse, but in fact was a character of color, like Mrs. Rue? How might this response be different from the one with the nurse? And of course, as you know, my beautiful people, you can make your post on Facebook using the hashtag Stay True to Yourself. Until next time when the answer is revealed. I want to thank everyone so much for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next time.